let's start out, Atul, just getting a little bit of your reaction. We've been on the ground now for a couple of days, first day of the summit. What are you seeing stand out? Any surprises so far?
I think I wouldn't say anything big stands out that's dramatically different than last year. But I think you're definitely seeing is that they're continue to progress in the right direction.
Okay.
Right? Because I think this is not something, the challenges are not something you solve in one day. And I feel like they've continued to make that progress. And if I were to expand on that, I would talk a little bit about that the domestic market continues to grow. And I think there is greater competition from the multinationals in Brazil now than there was, right? So I think maybe the lesson is that I hope they are thinking about getting ready. I hope they're getting ready. So I hope they're improving their practices and also focusing on making sure that the right skill sets will be retained. Because these will most likely be the next employees of the big MNC that comes in.
Well, there has been some discussion about education, and there's concerns about the quality of education, the quality of teachers. You're not new to emerging markets. These things don't get fixed overnight.
Yep.
But at the same time, we keep hearing there's so much intensity about the big wave of IT is transforming the world. Back to some of the things we talked about on our panel today, are there some risks with Brazil spending too much time thinking about the domestic demand issues?
Right. So I think even with the domestic demand, there's a challenge because it seems very quickly they will have a shortage of skilled labor. And the multinationals are going to keep coming because Brazil itself is a very strong domestic market. Plus, Brazil is a likely location for consolidating one of the regional centers. And I think they'll have the same problem that locations like India has had, which is that leads to increased attrition because loyalty is not there. The next player that comes in offers a little bit more. So I think the chances are there will be higher attrition and increased pricing. And that'll impact both the domestic market and the international market.
One of the things that I sort of perceive, I don't know if you would agree with this, is I get the real sense that Brazil itself, Brazil Inc., if you will, doesn't necessarily look at India as a peer. It's almost like maybe we're thinking ahead a little bit a few years here, but it's almost like they're trying to create their own category. Are we beginning to see the seeds of that, something very unique relative to all the external factors in this market?
I think there are some examples, but I wouldn't call it a brand yet, right? So we heard some stories from Johnson & Johnson, for example, and it's very clearly highlights the ability to be innovative, think in different ways, solve business problems rather than just reduce cost, right? But that brand it doesn't exist yet. And I think that may be the answer to it, is to build that brand and reinforce that brand. And it's not just building that brand in the U.S. market, it's also here and regionally. And I think that can pay a lot of dividends because it kind of sets you apart. And customers will then start making choices. Maybe scale, I should be in India. Maybe when I'm trying to solve a business problem that's relevant to this region, maybe this is where I need to be, that is in Brazil.
One of the things we probably don't talk enough about are the quite dynamic shared services market, the captives setting up, doing a lot of interesting things. And I know you watch that market, you have clients in that space. What do you think how is that influencing the maturity of this market?
Yeah, so what's interesting is I think most people think that I'll set up an operation in Brazil to serve Brazil. And then I'll pick one more location to serve the rest of Latin America. I think Brazil should make a case to be kind of what I call the hub and spoke model, right? So you not only serve Brazil, but you may actually provide the high-level expertise for the other regional markets. I remember this story about Chevron, when Chevron created an SAP center in Philippines. And 5 years later, even in the U.S., when they needed some in-house experts to work with the supplier in SAP, they brought them in from the Philippines. There's no reason Brazil can provide that level of expertise, even in these other regional markets that may be lower cost.
One of the things that the Chris Andrews from Forrester talked about is sometimes the decision maker, the CIO from the United States, sometimes looks for simplistic explanations to markets like Brazil. One of the things, whether we like it or not, there's a perception that Brazil is very expensive. In fact, we've heard people tell us that a fully loaded IT professional here is just about the same as it is in the United States. Does that concern you in any way? I mean, how is that sustainable?
Yeah, that's not sustainable. So then the only market they'll serve is when an MNC is doing operations in Brazil. But I think that is not sustainable. I think this is the reason why in a big country like Brazil, you have to penetrate the tier 2 and tier 3 cities for labor very quickly, right? Because that's the only way you keep your low cost. So you might have the large cities as your high-end, domain dominant kind of labor workforce and use some of the smaller cities to keep your low cost.
Absolutely. Well, Atul, hopefully we'll be back in 12 months. We'll do some more salsa dancing, and we'll have another chat.
And you might even do some samba next time.
There you go. Thanks,
you.
Atul.
Thanks.